Last week, a mother pleading for her son's life. Now Shirley Sodloff is privately grieving as she awaits confirmation of her son's death. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto, and ICE just releasing that video purported to show the beheading of Stephen Sodloff. Catherine Herridge has seen it and has much more on it. Catherine.
Well, thank you, Neil. The new video is called A Second Message to America, and as you mentioned, it purports to show the execution of journalist Stephen Sodloff. A masked terrorist, knife in hand, stands next to him, and the video ends with a horrific image of a head placed on top of the bloody body. While the intelligence community analyzes the tape, the White House today offered condolences, but no independent confirmation that it's genuine.
I'm not in a position to confirm the authenticity of that video or the reports at this point. Our thoughts and prayers, first and foremost, are with Mr. Sodloff and Mr. Sodloff's family and those who worked with him.
Weeks ago that ISIS threatened to kill Sodloff at the end of the Foley execution video if the U.S. continued airstrikes against Islamic State targets in Iraq. And at the end of today's video is another hostage believed to be a British citizen, and a very specific warning to nations who join any U.S.-led coalition against ISIS. The murder of 2 Americans in 2 weeks, according to critics, lends credence to their claims that the president has been hesitant in acting on the intelligence that's been available to him, Neil. And today we reported that there was specific intelligence about the rising threat of ISIS in the president's PDB, or President's Daily Brief, for at least a year now.
Catherine, thank you very much. Now, our own James Rosen pressing the State Department on whether we are at war with ISIS.
Does the Obama administration consider this an act of war?
We certainly, I'm not going to put new labels on it, James. I would say we certainly consider this act, this reported act, the act of the killing of James Foley, as a horrific terrorist act.
All right, to Pennsylvania Republican Congressman Scott Perry, a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Is this an act of war, Congressman?
Well, the president might not recognize it as such, but I would say the Islamic State and these kind of insurgents worldwide have declared war on the United States some time ago, and as we would say in the Army to the president, it's time to get in the war.
All right, so if he were to expand airstrikes against ISIS positions, even without your immediate approval, that is Congress's approval, you would support that?
Let me tell you this, Neil. We've known this for many of us for 3-4 years. I questioned Ambassador Ford a year and a half ago. What the president needs to do is take a leadership role instead of considering. I mean, you tell the mother and the family of Stephen Sodloff that we don't have a strategy because we're considering all our options. If we'd have considered our options a couple years ago, maybe him and James Foley's families and those 2 individuals wouldn't be in the circumstance they're in. So what the president and the administration needs to do is start leading. Stop leading from to and get in the fight and start taking some action.
So if he did that, sir, then your suggestion to start leading and take unilateral action, even though it might not involve immediate approval from Congress, because that might take some time, would you support that?
It depends on what it is, Neil. When I say lead, I don't mean take unilateral action. I mean come to the American people, come to the world, come to the Congress and say, this is our plan, this is our strategy, this is my vision, this is the narrative that America wants to have, where we set the conditions of the fight and the conditions for success. That's what I mean when I say leading. None of that has happened.
All right, when you say leading, though, does that involve in widening our campaign against ISIS positions, not only in Iraq, but in Syria, but in any other areas we suspect ISIS might be holding out?
I think leading means that using using the Obama administration's terminology, smart power, okay? But it needs smart people behind smart power. So you use all the instruments of power, which include diplomacy, but also the specter of military action, not only from the United States, but coalition forces. Where's the president? Where has he been in putting a coalition together, not only of America and its close allies like Great Britain and like Australia, but of the neighboring nations who have the most at stake? Where has he been while this is happening? This has been going on for some time now, so he should have started much sooner, but it's never too late. nobody leaves a cancer in their body unattended. Nobody in their right mind does that, and that's what has been happening. So I don't want to necessarily give him unilateral approval or approval to act unilaterally, but I do want to say that the Congress is interested in where he wants to go. But right now we have no idea where he wants to go, and neither do the American people, and neither does the world.
But you mentioned neighbors in the region and our allies, and they don't get their act together, and Saudi Arabia seems to be speaking out of both ends of its mouth. It is kind of hard to develop a coalition when they're not being very clear about their own resolve.
Well, it's doubly hard when you have no idea what your own strategy, what your own values, your own foundation is, and I think that's where our president and this administration is. They are rudderless. They don't know where they stand on it. So how can they lead anybody else, including the American people or an international coalition? It's hard to be critical of others when you're in the same circumstance yourself. But
I just want to be clear, and I'm sorry to be so redundant on this, but I just want to be
Sure.
clear, Congressman. You would back the president expanding a campaign. You don't think Congress would come back at him and criticize him for doing so if he were to do so?
Well, let me be clear, Neil, especially under this president, we don't feel in the Congress, I certainly don't feel comfortable with just allowing him to expand the program without seeing what the ends, just the means, but seeing what the ends were. So I don't want to say I'm going to give him a blank check, nor should any American, nor should the Congress. Okay. We want to know what the plan is, and then we will say yes or no.
Congressman, thank you very, very much.
That's what leadership is, and that's his prerogative, that's his responsibility, that's his duty.
Sir, thank you very much. In the meantime, if the president thinks that he is dealing with this crisis, Martin Luther King's niece says, think again. We have to realize that these are not nice guys, huh?
Well, you know, in King Rules, there's a chapter, Build the Beloved Community. You cannot build a beloved community by putting young men in front of a camera and cutting their heads off. I'm 64 years old, and in America, one nation under God, in God we trust. Have we been perfect? No. Do we have our problems? Yes. But then to have the leader of our country at one point say, well, we're no longer a Christian nation. And I'm noticing now that in all the reports, when we're hearing from the White House, we're hearing various answers. But where is the righteous indignation? Where is the charitable answer? What about the Geneva Convention? So are all rules gone now? And then do we pontificate about, well, we've done some strikes and we're having conversations, and yet young men are being killed and beheaded before our very eyes, American young men. And so I'm just not happy. I'm a mother and a grandmother. I have sons and grandsons, and this is very disturbing to me.
That's Martin Luther King's niece saying some things about the President of the United States you might not expect. But tonight at 8 p.m., you'll hear the rest. Be prepared to be surprised. Meanwhile, is anything being done about the illegals now flooding into our schools? The price tab on this, staggering. The Donald on how staggering.